This is the Cancer Interviews podcast, and I'm your host, Bruce Morton. Our guest on this episode is Valerie David of New York City. That Valerie has survived cancer 3 times is a powerful story all by itself. But upon reaching survivorship, she has taken to the stage to inform, inspire, and entertain with humor and transparency against a backdrop of her cancer journey. So prepare yourself for a great story. And here she is. Valerie, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Hi, thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Well, what we want to do is learn more about Valerie, exclusive of cancer. So if you would, Val, tell us a bit about where you're from, what you do for work, and what you do for fun. Although I have a feeling that the latter two, the line may be blurred between work and fun. But tell us a little bit about yourself, exclusive of cancer.
Sure. I live in Manhattan. I've been here for many years. I then also grew up in Virginia Beach, and I had to come back to New York because I loved theater from when I think I was a little baby. I had a theater DNA, and I came back to New York from originally being born there, then Virginia, then back to New York, because you can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the girl. And so I am pursuing an acting and singing career here in Manhattan. And I love doing improv. I love being with friends. I love my family, going to movies. I'm game for anything, anything and everything. And New York has so much to offer. So I take advantage of everything. Street fairs, festivals, you got it. I'm there. And I love movies as well. So, and I do watch sports. I do like sports as well. So, and I'm proud of my New York teams.
Excellent. Now let's talk about your cancer journey. And for all of us who have survived cancer, there was that time in which things seemed normal until they became abnormal. When did you first notice that something wasn't quite right?
Sure. And I'm a survivor of lymphoma and breast cancer. Did you want to go through the lymphoma journey first? The
Yes,
first
because
cancer?
because
Sure.
that was first. Let's talk about
You
that.
got it. So I started having really bad chest pains, and I was extremely fatigued all the time. I remember going to a vacation with my girlfriends from acting school, visiting Canada, and I slept through the entire trip, so much so that my friends were so worried about me. We looked at Niagara Falls for a second, and I went right back to sleep in the car. So they were very concerned about me, and I still didn't think anything I thought, oh, maybe I'm just tired, need more rest. But it turned out that the fatigue was part of the cancer journey that I didn't know I was going on just yet. And then I had these terrible, terrible chest pains that never went away, and then started getting a chronic cough as well. And I couldn't sleep on my back. I could only sleep on my sides because I literally was in terrible pain. And then I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was going to be.
So I suspect at that point you sought medical attention.
I did. I sought medical attention. I went to a new general practitioner who ended up being an oncologist, which I did not know. And he ended up being a lymphoma oncologist. Just a freak coincidence. And he had wonderful instincts, and he said, I'm going to take a chest x-ray. And then the chest x-ray showed a mass in my chest, and I still didn't get what was happening. And so he ordered a CAT scan, and I remember thinking, oh, it's just to show that something is not there, that it's just nothing. But basically it showed that there was something, and the question was, what is it? So then the CAT scan showed a tumor, and then I had a needle biopsy, and within those 2 weeks of December, I found out on New Year's Eve 1998 day that I had lymphoma. And then subsequent tests after that showed that it was stage 3 B cell diffuse large cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
By the way, we're confident you'll be able to learn some tips and tools to help you through your personal cancer journey. But first, we'd like to invite you to please give us a like, leave a comment or review below, and share this story with your friends. Kindly click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified the next time we release an interview. And if you or a loved one are facing a cancer diagnosis, please click on the link in the description and show notes below to check out our free guide, The Top 10 Things I Wish I Knew When I First Got Cancer. And Valerie, let's talk about when you first got cancer. It's not a question of whether it was a horrific day. Of course it was, but we are all different, our personas, and each diagnosis is different in terms of severity. So against the backdrop of those variables, once you got the news, once you heard that you had cancer, how did you handle that news?
Well, I was with my parents because we knew that we were going to get an answer the New Year's Eve day. And so I was so grateful to be with my mom and dad. And it was really interesting, Bruce. My instinct is always very accurate. And my instincts had been telling me that it was cancer. And I really tried to say, oh, I hope it's not. I hope it's not. And it was just the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And my parents were on the other phone lines that were in the apartment that we were in, and they heard it over the phone as well. And then they came rushing into the room and just held me as I cried and said, we're going to get through this, Valerie. You're going to be okay. So it was really wonderful that I was not alone when I found out this. And I was very grateful to my parents for literally picking me up figuratively and literally.
Well, next up for you was treatment. Did you have treatment options, or was there only one way to go?
I did have treatment options because of my age at the time. I was able to get 6 months worth of chemo condensed into a little over 3, different protocols, same drugs that are usually used for lymphoma. But because I was my age at 30, that the doctor said that let's try this. So I had an accelerated chemotherapy program that lasted over a little over 3 months.
You'd mentioned the medications involved. What medications were part of that regimen?
Sure. Cytoxin, Vincristine, and Adriamycin were the 3 drugs, chemo drugs.
And as we all know, and again, it varies from person to person, but there's no such thing as a pleasant chemo experience. It's always unpleasant, and it's just a matter of degrees depending upon the person and perhaps depending upon the medications. For you and chemotherapy, what was the toughest part?
I think the toughest part was the pain when the tumor was breaking up because of the chemo. I had a lot of chest pain, but that's a good thing. That meant that it was working. And I was just really lucky that after the first dose, my 9-centimeter tumor was halved. So I responded very quickly to the drug because it was a very lymphoma. The type I had was very aggressive. So it really responded well. And I think the hardest part really was not so much physical, but the mental part of it was the hardest part, as well as, I mean, losing the hair. That was tough psychologically because before that, I didn't look like a cancer patient. And then with looking myself in the mirror, I felt like a cancer patient, and that was a real hard thing to grasp. But I was very fortunate that with the chemo, I had one mouth sore. I did have complications where I think the hardest part is my white cell count kept going down, so I'd have to get hospitalized. I think that was hard because of the counts, and they were so low, and I had that fever that was above 100.4, where you should be calling your doctor if it reaches that you should call immediately, and mine was getting higher, and each time it was that or higher, I'd have to be admitted to the hospital and get intravenous antibiotics to fight the infection ensuing from the chemotherapy.
Was there a time in which you thought, I'll never get through this, that this routine is just going to go on forever?
Actually, That's such a great question. I did not, because I knew that there would be a finite time of a little over 3 months. And I was grateful that it didn't extend longer than that. So I knew that I had a finite, and I am come from a very strong family. So I really didn't, giving up or throwing in the towel was not an option.
So you did, the treatment regimen was finite. It was 3 months. And you sounded like you were confident that things were going to progress in a positive direction, and they did. If you would describe the feeling, like when you found out that you had survived your bout with non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Well, that's also such great questions, Bruce. With the chemo and having that finite time, I had a family history of lymphoma where my relatives survived. So I had a great base in knowing that I had a really inspiring family that helped me through this. So I felt if they could do it, I could do it. And so, and back when my grandmother had lymphoma, there was no chemo or radiation in the 1950s, and she still survived. So that was such a motivating factor to me. And it was the greatest moment in my life that I had found out that I had been cleared of cancer from lymphoma.
And yet, for you in your cancer journey, because unfortunately it was multifaceted, cancer returned. If you would describe the chain of events that led to that diagnosis.
Sure. Well, I was celebrating my 15th anniversary of being cancer-free in Aruba, and then, but before the trip, I started feeling, and this was in 2014, I started feeling a lump under my armpit. And I didn't really think anything of it because I felt I checked the cancer box, like check, had it. I did not ever think it would happen again, or a different cancer, especially since I didn't have radiation in the chest area where the lymphoma had primarily been. And so I got this lump under my chest, armpit, and then it started to grow. And then I thought something was wrong, but I still was in denial. And I thought, well, this can't be. And so it got to the point where I was having tea with a friend of mine who had lymphoma and breast cancer also, and said, I told her about the lump, and she said, you've got to get that checked. And I said, well, I was just going to wait and see. And she's like, no. So I made an appointment the next day, and then actually a couple of days later, because it was over the weekend, and that first thing on Monday, the gynecologist who I went to see said, you need to go to a cancer hospital right away. And then I knew again something was wrong. And then it turned out to be stage 2 invasive lobular carcinoma breast cancer. But I'm very grateful the doctor and my friend encouraged me to A, get this checked, and B, go back to my cancer hospital right away. So that, I think, was harder, to be honest, than the first cancer, because I wasn't expecting to get a second or a third. So, but I am really having to find the courage and strength to get through it. And that was hard, but I did it, and I'm really proud again of the family and friends and doctors who rally around me again. You know, my lymphoma team was helping me find the breast cancer team to go forward to get treatment for that. But I think psychologically it was actually harder to go through this again, because you know what to expect. And it was also a different cancer, whereas the lymphoma I had was curable. Breast cancer doesn't really, it's not it's not in that realm of always being curable, and no cancer is, but I had been told my lymphoma was curable, and I don't have to get tested for lymphoma anymore.
Valerie, I'm going to ask you a question that I will ask of other guests we've had who have had multiple cancers in which they survive their first bout with cancer, then they are hit with the news that they have been diagnosed with cancer a second time. And that is, and you've already answered this in large part, but I'll ask anyway. I would think that that second diagnosis, physically, mentally, emotionally, puts you at a crossroads in which you can go one way or the other. You can say, well, I have survived this before, I'll survive cancer again. Or you can say, I went through so much clashing swords with the first diagnosis, I don't know if I can do this again. It sounds like in large part you were in just about the best place possible to deal with this second bout. But looking back, what would you say was the toughest part? You said the psychological part was difficult. Was there anything else that was difficult about that second diagnosis?
Yes. I would be getting more treatment over a longer period of time, where I ended up having to have surgery, chemo again, and radiation. And the interesting part about the chemo is that lymphoma and breast cancer sometimes share the same drugs. So two of the drugs that I had for lymphoma, one being Adriamycin, I was not able to have again. And the Cytoxin had to be on a limited dose because I had that for lymphoma. So my treatment actually was chemo light. And they added Docetaxel as well. So yes, there was never a question in my mind that I was not going to fight this. I was definitely going to fight this. But I think the challenge I faced is that this was not 3 months, and it was going to be a little over 8 months. And I was 45 at the time. And so that also put into the factor of child rearing, that this time chemo was going to put me into menopause. So I knew that I was also facing having to deal with not being able to have a child. But then I realized I won't be around if I don't take the treatment, and I can always adopt and be a stepmom. So there's always flipping that around, where I'm dealt with this card again, but it's my choice to decide how I'm going to deal with it. So again, there was no question and to fight. And same with my parents. It was a shock, but the next words out of their mouth were, well, here we go again. We're just going to keep fighting.
You had mentioned a medication that you took with your second chemo experience that you didn't take with the first one. And I'm sorry, I forgot its name.
Oh, sure. Docetaxel. Mm-hmm.
And what's that again?
Docetaxel.
Okay, if you would describe the idiosyncrasies that were attached to taking that medication, and did that make your second chemotherapy experience tougher than the first one?
No, it did not make it tougher because I had limited chemo. I had way more chemo with lymphoma. I still had the same side effects of losing the hair, but I ended up only having 3 cancer treatments instead of 4. They didn't want to give me the usual higher number. And then I was allergic to one of the drugs, so they had to take me off of it. So I really only had 3 chemos instead of the higher number where I had 7 with lymphoma. But yes.
Our guest is Valerie David in New York City. She is a 3-time cancer survivor, and we have talked about 2 cancer journeys, but you survived this second round with cancer, but cancer came back a 3rd time. If you would, tell us about the chain of events involved there.
Yes. Well, so I finished treatment in 2015 for the stage 2 breast cancer. And this time around, and in fact, what I wanted to say, with the second breast cancer, I didn't end up saying, I found the lump and I had a weird feeling it was cancer. I just had waited, unfortunately, which was not a smart thing, because I was starting a new job with new insurance, and the new insurance was going to kick in another couple of months. And that's why I was waiting. And that was out there listening, never wait, because it could have gotten worse if I waited for my new health insurance to kick in, because I was worried about finances, and I chose finances over my health, which I will never do again. So the third time, it was 2018, and I had chest pains again, and I immediately knew that I had cancer again. There was no doubt in my mind. And I actually called my oncologist, and I had these same chest pains. I actually thought it was lymphoma again. So I called my oncologist and I said, I have cancer again. And they assured me it was a pulled chest muscle. And I said, no, it's not. And I was getting a checkup anyway, for breast cancer. And fast forward, I was correct. And I immediately started treatment again, except that this time there couldn't be chemotherapy or radiation because it was stage 4 metastatic breast cancer that had bone metastases in the chest and rib cage. And that's why I was having the pain in the chest, because it had metastasized to my chest bone. And that was devastating because it was stage 4 metastatic, and we all have this idea with metastatic that that's it, that's the end of the line. And my father said, oh, is there anything after stage 4? And I said, no, it's stage 4. I didn't know what to expect and what to believe, but the interesting part was that 8 months earlier, in between acting jobs, I'm a freelance copy editor, and I was working on a new metastatic breast cancer drug that had come out in 2017 called Verzenio. And it was 8 months again before I was diagnosed. And I remember going, oh, that's a really great drug. That looks like a really great drug. I don't have metastatic breast cancer, but I'm really impressed with all the data that I'm seeing. Well, it turns out 8 months later, I did get metastatic breast cancer, and my doctor was offering me another drug. And I said, I'd studied this ad campaign and worked on it. Would you mind if we tried Verzenio? And she said, of course, whatever you want. I agree with you on that. I'll do whatever you feel, because I feel this could also be the right treatment for you. Fast forward 5 months later, I was getting scans to check the Verzenio and its effectiveness. Plus, I was on Letrozole as well, a combination of the CD4K inhibitor and an AI. And I was expecting some improvement. However, the scans came back not showing any evidence of disease. So that was probably the greatest moment of my entire life. And less than 3% of people on the drug have this 100% outcome. And I'm grateful and thankful that I did. And I know that it doesn't happen for everyone, and there is no miracle cure. And I just was very grateful to have this happen. And I wish that were the outcome for everybody I know that has cancer. So I'm now in 2024. And I'm in my 6th year, and I'm now just taking Letrozole, and I have had no evidence of disease. And it really goes to show you, Bruce, that when I called the metastatic survivor support group, when I was diagnosed, the woman on the phone said, well, you have a 3 to 5 year life expectancy. I hate to say you're not going to die of old age. Well, I called her again and told her that that's not a true statement to say to somebody, because cancer, we're trying to move forward to have this be a chronic illness. I will always be stage 4 metastatic, but I think a New York bus will knock me down before cancer does. So being stage 4 metastatic breast cancer is something that is a part of who I am, but it doesn't identify who I am. And it hasn't stopped me from doing everything that I love in my life, and nor should any cancer diagnosis, that we have to keep finding the hope and the passion. And that's my message that we'll talk about later. But I was very lucky to have this happen. And it's something I'm, again, forever grateful for. And I, again, know this isn't always the outcome for people. And again, I wish it were.
Hope and passion. Let's fast forward to those much more pleasant words and how you have infused those operative words into your life now and going forward. Your journey has inspired you to write and act in a play that has been a smashing success in the United States and abroad. Two-part question. First part, describe that inspiration, just how the inspiration became the germ of an idea.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. I have an award-winning one-woman play called The Pink Hulk, One Woman's Journey to Find the Superhero Within. I began writing it right after I finished stage 2 breast cancer. And I had this passion to write it because I had lymphoma and stage 2 breast cancer at the time. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to help people the way people have helped me through this journey. And that's all that's really my passion, is to inspire and empower others to fight back, not just cancer, but any adversity in their lives. So I remember I had a bad foot, and I was in a boot and a scooter, and it was in 2015. I had just finished earlier in the year the treatment for stage 2 breast cancer. And I remember it was Thanksgiving and I wasn't very mobile, and I had this burning desire to start writing. So I started writing, and I was very encouraged by my oncologist. I had taken a writer's workshop at Omega called Writing from the Heart, Jumpstart Your Memoir course. And the woman that ran it and it was just amazing. And I started writing in this class, and a theme started to happen when we had these writing prompts. And she said, "You are a writer," and encouraged me that there was something in my story that, so between that, like having my oncologist encourage me, Nancy encouraging me, and Franny, who was also one of the teachers in the class, and a music instructor in the writing class, did a lot of wonderful meditations, and the group sang. It was a very wonderful communal, we're in this beautiful setting, writing, from morning till night for the week. And the Pink Hulk started to form just by the writing prompts. And then I went on an improv camping trip, and we had to talk about ourselves in front of everyone. And I started talking about my journey, and Ali, who runs the People's Improv Theater, said, "There's a story there." So I had all these encouragement. And then I had a full-time job that afterwards I felt I needed to do something more with my life. And the owner of the company said, "I know you're going to do well, and whatever you set your mind to, and we're sorry to lose you, but I understand your journey and that you're needing to do something different after what you've gone through." So I had all these encouragements, and my family. So fast forward, in less than 6 months, the Pink Hulk went from page to stage, and I had a full production of it starting in June 19th of 2016. And now I've been going ever since, with over 50 festivals and abroad, in Europe as well. But that's not what's important to me, the awards or reviews. It's the fact that I'm helping people and inspiring them. And that's the greatest gift. And after each show, I also have talkbacks with the audience, where audience members share their stories. And it's not just cancer survivors and patients, it's also the loved ones that are taking care of them, the caregivers, the doctors, the nurses. I did the show as sensitivity training at Rhode Island College, and for the nursing department, to show them step by step the journey of a cancer patient. So my show is also funny. It's walking through a cancer journey, and you're on this journey with me from beginning to end. And so, and in fact, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer the day my show, Pink Hulk, was opening in Portland, Oregon, that morning. And I was performing that night. As I was getting into the theater, I got the call, and the choice was the show must go on. And I kept doing the show, and it didn't stop me from doing the show, even with this third diagnosis. So I want people to walk away feeling hopeful, that they too can fight this journey, and they have that's why it's called the superhero within, because I had to find my superhero within to conquer 3 cancers, and I want people to find and help them find their own superhero within to fight adversities in life, not just from cancer.
Valerie, one final question for you before we wrap up. I am not an expert on stand-up comedy. I don't have a list of my favorite comics or anything like that, but I am aware of a stand-up comic who perhaps you've heard of, named Tig Notaro. Tig Notaro has been diagnosed with breast cancer. She's a stand-up comic, and she is able to successfully weave material involving cancer and involving and humor as well. If you would just wrap up and tell us how you can mix the two together in a way that will resonate with people who have been diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Tig. She's amazing. So the show has a lot of humor in it, because even in the darkest times, you find humor. And I think that that's really an important part of the Pink Hulk, that it's not why me and doom and gloom. It's actually quite funny, because one of the things I thought, I ended up getting a lumpectomy, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. And so I was really nervous and had a lot, anxiety, and I was afraid that I was going to lose my breasts. And so I started calling ex-boyfriends saying, hey, like, I might be getting a mastectomy, I have breast cancer, can we meet up? And they kept going, no, and I got rejected. And it's the funny journey with that. And then you have to come see the show if I have a happy ending. And it was but it's more than that. It's about reclaiming your power. And I think I had a harder time with breast cancer than I did with lymphoma psychologically, because it's a female cancer, just like with prostate cancer, with breast cancer, with ovarian cancer, with uterine cancer. It's part of our reproductive and who we are as a woman or a man, and so I think that I was so I think that's what made me hard with breast cancer, because there were going to be permanent side effects where I wasn't going to be able to have children. I was worried about, love after cancer. And it's a powerful message that we can reclaim what we feel we've lost. And if it is something that we did lose, what we can do to flip it around to make it where it's not a loss. And I know people have said to you, I'm sure many times, and yourself going through, what you've gone through, that these challenges we face in life are a gift, that it only makes us stronger. And it's really enhanced my life. I wouldn't be traveling around the world if it weren't for the Pink Hulk. I wouldn't be seeing family that I have never met before, because I'm doing the show in the town they live in. So it's been an incredible journey, and I'm so grateful for the journey that I've had from that. But I think that with Tig, there's a lot of humor in my show, and you'll definitely have to come see it to enjoy the laugh out loud moments and heartwarming moments and heartbreaking moments as well. So there's a balance that I think is important, but one thing is never forget the humor. Because I even was performing improv when I was under treatment with a scarf on my head, and I was still doing comedy, even in treatment, when I felt well enough to do so, that is. Yes.
Valerie, we're going to go now, but if somebody would like to learn more about what you're doing, you have a website. What is that web address?
Yes, it's pinkhulkplay.com. And I can be reached at pinkhulkplay@gmail.com. And I'd love to come to your town to do the show, and I'd love to make it happen. So I'm so grateful to be on this show sharing my story. Thank you, Bruce.
And thanks so much, Val. Valerie David of New York City. Val, want to thank you one more time for being with us on Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And we want to remind you as we conclude, as we always do, that if you are on a cancer journey, you or a loved one, you are not alone. There are people out there just like Valerie David who have information that can inform and inspire. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.